So if you're invested in the Sri Lankan stock market, you've definitely come across the Central Depository System, or CDS. But what happens when you actually need to move those shares from one place to another? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down today, step by step.
Maybe you're thinking about switching to a new broker, or maybe you want to give some shares to a family member. Whatever your reason, moving your shares is something a lot of investors need to do. But let's be honest, the process can seem a little intimidating, right? Don't worry, we're going to make it simple.
Okay, so who's the big boss in charge of all this? That would be the CDS. The easiest way to think about it is like a master logbook for every single share in Sri Lanka. It's the one central system that tracks exactly who owns what. This is what keeps the whole market secure and, accountable.
All right, first things first. Why would you even need to transfer your shares in the first place? Because it's not always about buying and selling. Let's jump into the most common reasons.
So you're looking at four main scenarios here. The one you'll see most often is just changing your broker. Pretty straightforward. Then you've got what are called off-market transfers, things like gifts or inheritance. And these need a bit more paperwork, including approval from the SEC. Corporate actions, like a big merger, they come with their own special documents. And you can even move shares around to use as collateral for a loan. The main thing to remember is each of these situations has its own little pathway.
All right, let's get into the actual playbook. Now, the good news here is that no matter why you're transferring, there's a universal set of steps that applies to pretty much every single case. If you can master this, you're pretty much set.
It's basically a 5-step process. First, you fill out the correct form, and most of the time, that's going to be CDS Form 6. Now, step 2 is absolutely critical. Your broker has to verify and certify the signatures. This is a step you just cannot skip. After that's done, your broker sends everything off to the CDS, they do their processing, and then you get the final word, a confirmation or a rejection.
But wait a second. What happens if it is rejected? I mean, you've done all the paperwork, and then nothing. It's a real possibility, right? Even a tiny mistake on a form can bring the whole thing to a grinding halt.
Well, here's the reassuring part. If there is an issue, the CDS isn't going to leave you in the dark. They'll issue a very specific document called a Form 14, and it will explain exactly why the transfer was rejected. That way, you know precisely what you need to fix to get it right the next time.
Okay, let's do a little deep dive into a specific scenario. What if you just want to gift your shares to someone? This is a classic off-market transfer. And yeah, it comes with a few special requirements.
For gifting shares, you're going to need two key things. First, that standard CDS Form 6, all filled out and verified, of course. But the second piece is mandatory. You need the original approval document from the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. Now, why is that? Well, this extra step makes sure the gift is legitimate and not some sneaky way to get around market rules. Without that SEC stamp of approval, the transfer is a no-go. Now for a much more complex situation. What happens to shares when an account holder passes away? This process involves inheritance, which means more steps and more people are involved, so getting the sequence right here is absolutely crucial. Okay, this one has 4 pretty unique steps. It all kicks off with confirming the share balance using a CDS Form 19. Then, that form, along with all the legal docs, goes to the company's secretary of the specific company whose shares are being transferred. And here's the key difference. The company's secretary has to sign off on everything before it even gets to the CDS. Think of them as the company's official gatekeeper, legally verifying the inheritance before that master logbook can be updated.
So, for that final submission to the CDS, you really need to have a complete package ready to go. You'll need that approved CDS Form 19 from the company secretary, a receipt showing you've paid the stamp duty, all those supporting legal documents like a probate, and finally a good old CDS Form 6 signed by the executor or the heirs. It's really all about having all your ducks in a row before you submit.
Phew, okay, we've covered a lot of ground, so let's boil this all down to an essential checklist, the absolute must-knows for pretty much any share transfer you'll ever do. Let's make this super simple. Think of it in 2 buckets. In one bucket, you have what's always required, using the correct CDS forms and, of course, getting them verified by your broker. Non-negotiable. In the other bucket, you have what's often required, especially for those off-market transfers, getting that SEC approval and paying the stamp duty. If you can just keep these 4 things in your head, you're going to be in great shape. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? At the end of the day, transferring shares isn't some random, confusing thing. It's a systematic process.
The key is always using the right form, getting it properly verified, and making sure you've secured all the necessary approvals for your specific situation.
And there you have it. That's the playbook for handling CDS share transfers in Sri Lanka. Now that you know the rules of the game, I guess the only question left to ask is, are your own records ready for when you need them?